All right, everybody. Hello. Welcome to the live stream. Hopefully you found the YouTube channel. We're going to let people start commenting into this room before we actually officially get the episode started. I just want to remind everybody that if you have a question, if you post it on the YouTube chat underneath the YouTube video, you're going to be able to ask your question. We'll be able to answer it live on the air. It'll be fantastic. That's the benefit of you showing up for these live events. And if not, we're still releasing these as podcast episodes. So with that being said, I'm actually going to go ahead and get us started here. I'm going to mute you guys, okay?
I cannot hear you, Mike.
There we go. Now I'm back. Here we go. Welcome to, I forgot to unmute myself. I unmuted you guys and I forgot to unmute myself. Welcome to The Struggle is Not Real. This is the podcast that deconstructs popular myths and limiting beliefs that hold entrepreneurs back, replacing them with more empowering perspectives and practical strategies. Each episode, we will take a specific misconception. We'll give a little historical perspective behind that misconception. We'll challenge why we think that misconception may be flawed or that perception might be flawed. And then we'll get Kristen's talk on some practical application stuff because she is the queen of coaching. And I am joined by the queen of coaching, Kristen Tabbert, and New York Times bestselling author, Michael Lennington. Besides having Michigan internet and the video being flawed here, how are the two of you all? Michael, how are you doing?
Doing really well. We are in the middle of a heavy snowfall, kind of like the eye of the storm right now, though. But we've gotten 2 feet, and we're supposed to get another foot or so, right, Kristen?
Yep, something along those lines.
Is it like the lake effect snow?
I don't know.
I think so. I think it's coming from the east because we're on the sunrise side of the state now, so we're getting Lake Huron, and it's coming from that direction. So this isn't typical for here. But it's like shifted and the winds are in a different direction and it's coming in and it's interesting.
Yeah, we're ready to move back to Kentucky.
We are.
Listen, you say that now and we're going to get I'm actually in North Carolina today. That's why I'm in a different scenario, different setup. But we're starting 6 inches of rain supposedly tonight in Kentucky. And the ground is already saturated from the snowfall we had earlier in the week. And then apparently Wednesday, Thursday, we might be getting another really major snowstorm. So you guys left and all the snow started coming to Kentucky. We've already had more snow than we would typically have over probably the course of 3 years. So it's been pretty eventful. I don't know. I'm trying to think if Rocco's had a full 5-day school week since being back from Christmas vacation. I know we didn't have school at all the first week back. I mean, because of the snow. So, who knows? It's a crazy time. Well, let's talk about what we're going to get into today. You might be wondering, what does a 500-year-old religious concept have to do with your packed schedule? Well, it turns out quite a lot. The Protestant work ethic emerged during the Protestant Reformation, a time of significant religious and social change in Europe. The ethical framework emphasized hard work, diligence, and frugality as virtuous traits. It wasn't just about working hard. It was about seeking work as a moral duty and sign of God's favor. One of the key figures in developing this idea was John Calvin, a prominent Protestant reformer. Calvin preached the doctrine of predestination, which essentially said that God has already decided who will be saved. This led believers to look for signs of their election and chosenness in their worldly view of success? And how did you achieve worldly success? Through hard work, of course. The mindset represented a significant shift from earlier views of work in medieval Catholic Europe. Work was often seen as a necessary evil, something you did to survive, but not necessarily something to be glorified. The Protestant reformers flipped this on its head, arguing that work itself could be a form of worship. As this idea spread, it began to influence society beyond just religious circles. German sociologist Max Weber, writing in the early 20th century, that this Protestant work ethic played a crucial role in the development of capitalism. Whether or not you buy Weber's argument, it's clear that these ideas had a profound impact on Western culture. Fast forward to today, and we can still see the echoes of this ethic in our society. The idea that being busy equals being virtuous, that constant activity is a sign of moral character. These are direct descendants of the Protestant work ethic. We have secularized it, of course. We are no longer working to prove our election by God, but we often work as if we're trying to prove our worth to society, to our peers, or even to ourselves, definitely probably to our companies. This historical context helps you understand maybe why busyness has become such a badge of honor in our culture. It's not just about getting things done. It's tied to a deep-seated cultural values that has been developing for centuries. So here it is. Does busyness equal productivity? Michael, I think the one thing that I always hear, or Chris and I actually heard this quite a bit when we were doing some courses helping people embrace some short cycle execution strategies, is that they didn't have time for the 12-week year. And if you're saying that, Michael, it's the exact reason of why you need
The 12-week year.
12-week year. So
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit, because I think people hear the 12-week year and they think that for 12 weeks, you're going to be busting your butt for 24/7 just to try to hit this massive goal.
Yeah, and I think the sense of overwhelm and being so busy you can't get things done, which is kind of an oxymoron, I guess, oxymoronic same thing to say. But I think the thing is that people have this view that everything that they have been assigned to do or that they can do becomes part of what they should do. And I think there's always more work to do than you have time to get it done. There always will be. You'll never, ever be done. And so when people say that they don't have time to install ways to save time and be more efficient because they have to stop doing what they're currently doing to get more efficient, they're trapped, permanently trapped. They can't get out of that mess. And so it's important to realize that, some things that you're doing don't even need to be done. There's probably things that are on your plate right now that you're doing that if you stop doing them, no one would even notice. In fact, I know people who do that. They stop doing things and then nobody says anything, so they just never do them again. So I think we make the assumption that we have to do this stuff, Mike, and I agree with you. I think being able to stop and get better at what you're doing helps you to be more focused on the higher value activities. And if you can't do that, you absolutely need to do it.
Well, I feel like people go around bragging about, hey, I worked a 60-hour work week. I did this, this, and this. And at the end of the day, like if you said, okay, like, well, what progress did you make towards your goal? If they can't clearly decide, define that, or what progress did you make towards whatever result you were trying to create, if you can't articulate that, then all you did was, try to justify getting paid by how many hours you worked and not necessarily the value you bring to the hour. Right. So Kristen, you've got to know, and you've got to encounter tons of clients that are doing so many unnecessary things in their day, so many of those white chip activities that kind of tie it back to last week's episode, that they're busy, but they're not productive.
Exactly. It's how they feel about what they're doing in a day. And you've heard us say a bazillion times, feelings are unreliable, and we can be very busy checking off the boxes of those low value activities, and it makes us feel like we're getting things done. The things that are harder, the more strategic tactics that we do that are designed to run our businesses and elevate our businesses, take us to the next level, really help make progress towards that vision and ultimately the life that we dream of living. those are hard, and we don't always get them done in a day. They may go on for days on end. They could go on for weeks or months, even sometimes, depending on the projects. And so, checking the boxes in a day and going, yep, got that done. Yep, got that done. Now we've got this big checklist of accomplishments, but they're not really accomplishments. But yet it makes us feel good in the moment, short-term comfort, happiness, until the things in our business start to decline. We're not doing the things we need to do. Then we have a different feeling.
And Michael, I think I saved a concept. I knew that these two topics, last week's topic was, time is not money, and this one being that busy is not productive. And I really wanted to talk about this last week, but I saved it specifically for this week because I think it's a better fit. Talk to people a little bit about this concept of intentional imbalance.
Yeah. So people sometimes have this notion that balance means 50-50, 50 this and 50 that. The reality is it's never like that exactly. And there are times and there are seasons in your life and in your career where you need to spend more time in a specific area because that area needs your attention. Could be you're starting up a new business, could be you're working on a relationship, could be just about anything, but we are always out of balance, but there's a way to be out of balance that's intentional, that's aligned with what's most important now. And I think that's where people try to struggle for this perfect balance that's not achievable, but intentional imbalance is. And I think it lets go of some of that guilt of not being able to be everything for everybody all the time, that we sometimes can feel, and realize that there are times we have to say no. There's seasons where we have to say no, and other seasons where we're going to say yes.
And that no's got to mean, that's the important thing. When you say no, your yes actually means something, right? So to kind of go a little bit deeper in that, let's unpack the concept of really when you all wrote the 12-week year, you were doing consultation work for financial advisors. Is that right?
Pretty much, yeah.
And you were helping people. Basically, you all were noticing that people had this misconception of time, again referring back to the first episode, and they would get behind getting to their quota, and so they basically crammed all of their productivity into a 12-week period of time so that they could hit their quotas that they wanted to do. This is a perfect example, I think, of this imbalance concept, of the intentional imbalance that you're talking about, right? That where we have I gotta clear my plate, I gotta clear what's in front of me, and I gotta get very focused on these high level activities.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the ability to prioritize and rank your activities is really critical, because you cannot get everything done. The average American worker has something like 40 hours, and we talked about this last week, of unfinished work on their desk when they go home at night. And that was a study done a number of years ago, so it may be even worse than that. But the point is you can't get it all done. And as soon as you let go of the illusion that you should figure out what's most high, what's the top priorities. And so with a 12-week year, when we set 12-week goals, by definition, those goals are the most important things for us in this 12-week cycle. Now, a lot of people just use it for business, so I'm not saying business is more important than personal, but we have people who set personal goals too. And those that set balanced goals like that, there shouldn't be anything more important in your life than those goals. There are other things that may be urgent, but when I say more important, it's you're intentionally saying these are the things that if I get them done this 12 weeks, I'm going to be moving in the direction I want to move in my life. I want to be having the impact I want to have in my business. I want to have this certain impact in my personal life. And if I hit those goals, then I've lived a good 12 weeks. And that's really hard to do sometimes, is to prioritize the important stuff over the urgent, because urgent stuff is burning. And there's often a negative consequence in not responding to it. So you've got to be able to find time. And that's why we talk about not overloading your plan too.
Kristen, how do you help people identify then what is that important goal that they want to go after? And then unpack that even further. And you can talk about how you kind of decide what those activities are that you're going to focus on.
First, we kind of deconstruct expectations. People come into goal setting and they come at it from a perspective of, this is what I should be doing. This is what my business isn't doing. So I need to set these goals around it. And that may be true, especially if you're really not being productive and you've got urgency in your business to be, creating some real financial windfalls. But most of the time, goal setting ends up being, well, so-and-so did this and look at their business. it's never taking a clear look at what your right goals for right now should be. Starting where you stand today, knowing exactly where you're at, not how you feel where you're at, taking inventory of all those things, and then identifying the goal. And sometimes even identifying the goal isn't enough. The goal needs to be identified and then written in a way that it resonates with you, so that once it becomes mundane, once it becomes a grind, once you get tired of doing the everyday stuff and you want to go back and get a new idea, it's framed in a way that it resonates with you. It speaks to you. You're going to do the things that are hard when you don't feel like doing them. So to
And
come
then
up with, oh, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, I was just
Oh,
going to ask to follow up about how do you take that goal, and then now how do you figure out what those key tactics are to achieve that goal so that you know where you want to execute?
So everybody wants to go to how first. If this is my goal, how am I going to do it? And you're trying to come up with step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4. And you can't start there, because if you knew how to do it, you'd already be doing it. And you go back to what you already know and what's comfortable. So we have to ask the question first, not how might I do this, but what if I did? And then we start coming up with, if you think it, you mind map it. So we get a mind map going, whether it's on paper or on screen, but we just come up with all the ideas, good, bad, ugly, feasible, realistic, unrealistic, funny, and we put everything down on paper. And then I like to use a litmus test of, okay, if I told you you could only do one action, what action would have the most impact in you predicting that the goal will be achieved? And then you automatically go to, well, this is the one thing that'll really start. Okay. And if that's good, is that all we need? No, I probably need to do a few other things. Okay. What's the second? If you could only do 2 things, what are the 2 highest value tactics that would be predictive of you hitting your goal? And so then, we get to the point where we have really high value tactics designed to drive the goal. And a lot of people will always ask then, how many tactics should I have? And we answer, as many as needed, as few as possible. But I'm going to negate that just a little bit and say, over the years of doing this, I've seen averages. And for me and what I've seen, 5 is roughly a good average of tactics, somewhere around 5 to 7. You start getting more than that, and guess what we're stepping into? Dangerous territory of a to-do list again.
And I think that is exactly right. So, and I said it earlier about clearing your plate, like really clearing your surface, and then being very choosy about which tactics are coming back on your plate first. Michael, the really productive people that I talk to, it actually seems that they're not really busy at all. That instead of being busy, they're probably more just very focused and very intentional. Speak on that for me.
Yeah, I think that can be true. I think there's a piece that comes when you know that the most important things are getting done. That when you go home at night, you did the things that are driving your business. You did the things that really mattered in your day. And on the weekend, the same thing. You have better weekends, I think, if you really know that big stuff got done. And intuitively, we know that there's these high priority tactics that when they get done, they create the most results. And I think the people that feel and appear to be at peace, even though they're very productive, I think that's where they're at. They have a way of really being clear on what's vitally important. And I think they're also really good at not letting things. They've got some great walls up, some great barriers up to having people just dump stuff on them. And they found ways to kind of keep that from happening, because if you are seen as somebody who will take on work and do work, you'll get work to take on and do, but it won't necessarily be driving where you want to go, right? We start living our life in a should and shouldn't mode, like you guys were just talking about, where I should do this, somebody wants me to do this. Being able to say no creates freedom. And if you're clear on what your top priorities are, it's a lot easier to say no. And if you have a boss who overloads you, then it's just making that decision explicit to your boss. Okay, I'm working on this stuff over here. I can do that, or I can do what you just gave me, which is higher priority, and let them prioritize for you. Because then they have to logically decide what you can do and what you can't do.
And I want to add, I want to bring this back to vision, because without that vision, you're not going to say no to things. No is the driver to living the life of your dreams. You're not going to get there by saying yes to everything.
Yeah, and I think, we got to remember, for the most part, our audience is entrepreneurs, right? So they're the ones that the buck stops here. They're the ones that are chasing the vision for their business. They may have employees in place to handle things as they come flying their way, and whatever else they got to put in place. But the trick, I guess, with an entrepreneur, and we talked about it last week too, is not feeling like you have to do it all, right? You may be willing to do it all, but you don't have to do it all. And so, Kristen, as we sit in this world and we got very focused on the priorities that we want to tackle, and we know what our key tactics are that we want to go execute on, how do successful people working short cycle execution plans, how do they handle the constant flow of seemingly urgent tasks or to-dos that come their way? How do they protect themselves, deflect them? What do they do? What do they do with all this stuff? It doesn't stop. All this other stuff's got to get done.
So there's three things I like to share with my clients, and I like to live by myself in order to structure my day in a way that allows me to get the most important things done. Are there things that are manual processes? Can I automate them? And by the way, automation doesn't necessarily mean on your computer. I want to come back to this in a little bit when we talk about time wasters and how to adjust some of those. But what can you automate? Do you have systems that are archaic? Are they redundant? Do you have systems that you're repeating? What can you eliminate? Really looking at your day and all the things that you say you have to do, and what's really the most important. I myself have a rule of thumb. I use a paper planner, and I have my to-dos in my paper planner, and I have my strategic plan off to the side. In my time block in my calendar for the day, I pull tasks from my plan and write them in my calendar. So when I hit that hour, I know exactly what task I'm stepping into and doing. With my to-dos, I use my buffer blocks to handle those. And if I don't get to them, I'll move them to the next day. And I have a rule for myself. If I've moved it 3 days in a row, it doesn't hit the fourth day. And then I let the chips fall where they may. I may have a consequence because of not doing something, like you've heard me say this, I don't pay my electric bill, I'll get a shut-off notice. But most of those to-dos, those white chip activities, if they don't get put on the fourth day and I never do them, I usually don't see a negative consequence from it. It's just fluff stuff.
And I love, personally, and I'll let you guys kind of comment on this too, but David Allen's book, Getting Things Done, right? So like the concept of, if you're using your if you're using your time blocks and your strategic block is completely shut off, so you almost have to somehow insulate yourself from the flow of things that are heading your way and put yourself in a very strategic work environment to really get some of this deep work stuff done and execute towards your goal. And then during your buffer blocks, as you're checking all the different sources of messages, having one common place where all that stuff is going. So taking stuff from your voicemail, your email, your direct messages, your text, all these different messages that we have coming our way, and notifications that you have got to do with. If you can capture them in one location, and then you can make the decision, can it be done in like a very short amount of time, like in less than 2 minutes? Can you just go ahead and just do it? Then just go ahead and do it, because it literally might be easier to do it than delegate it, or defer it. So do I want to do it? Do I want to delegate it? So give it to someone else to do. Do I want to defer it, meaning just like Kristen just said, I want to do it the next day, or do I just delete it because it's not important to me at all at the time? And that concept, to me, I thought really resonated as well. And it's really about funneling things into those buffer blocks, using those buffer blocks to complete, to capture all those to-dos. If you can do some of those to-dos inside your buffer block, then great. And then making sure that you are able to, again, do it, delegate it, defer it, or delete it. Michael, anything you want to add to that piece?
Like we've talked about before, all systems are wrong, some are useful, and I think all models are wrong, some are useful. And I think the thing about any time management approach has got its flaws and it's got its benefits. But I think if you can get it to deal with 60% of that stuff, 70% of the stuff in an effective way, you're miles ahead, right?
Yes.
And like Kristen was saying, sometimes you can experiment with things, just don't do it and see if anybody screams, and then just never do it again. Just take it off your to-do list forever. And we make assumptions about all the things that are given to us that we have got to do them, and that's a false assumption. We can't get it all done, and it's important to just be willing to take some risks and see what doesn't get called back on you.
All right, there's one other major point that I want to get to in this thing, but Kristen, you mentioned, did you want to go deeper with the automation stuff?
Oh, I did. So, we're going to talk about distractions and, the things that make us feel busy, and it's being distracted by our computer screens. So when I talk about automation, it's not necessarily using anything on your computer that, some of the things that on our computer that's designed to create more productivity, in my opinion, actually creates more distractions, because it allows us to have screens open, go places we wouldn't go because something catches our attention. So automation may not necessarily mean electronic versions, electronic calendars, all these things. There's some merit to some old school things, and then there's the muscle memory that goes along with it. If you're not using an electronic calendar and you're using a paper calendar, you're more likely to execute the tactics you're writing down because you're physically using muscles to write it down. You're not distracted by multiple visual aspects on your screen. So just take some time. If you think you've got all these productivity tools, undo something and then see if you can actually become more productive because of it.
All right, Michael, if the amount of hours we do something is not the right way for us to measure if our week was productive or not, what should we do? How do we measure our productivity?
Well, as a 12-year practitioner, it's going to be the percentage of tactics that I had due in my plan that I got done, right? And I never expect to be perfect, but if I can get about 80% of those tactics done week in and week out, it means, number one, I'm not overloaded, but number two, I'm not going to ever be perfect. But you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to get everything done all the time. You just have to be consistently good at getting things done, and that's what I look for. So I evaluate the percentage of tactics that I wanted to get done that I actually got done.
All right. So as we're wrapping up today, and Kristen, I don't know, do you have any other practical application points that you want to make on this one?
To kind of hitch on to what Michael was saying, focus on your outcomes, not your outputs. Plan for the day. What do you want to get done today? And focus on the things that are going to get that outcome across the finish line, not all the things you're doing.
I couldn't agree more. And I think that's exactly what ends up happening. We end up wearing all this stuff that we're doing as a badge of honor, and not, necessarily the fact that, hey, I just really focused in on here, and that's also massive growth. And here's the numbers that we produced. And that's exactly how it needs to happen. And so just an encouragement to everybody on this call. Like, if you're feeling overwhelmed and busy, start stripping things away. Figure out what you can defer, what you can delegate, what you can delete. What can you automate, as Kristen was talking about before, and get down to the core of what it is that is those red and blue chip activities that are going to really make a difference if you're doing those on a high end level. So anything else, any other parting words? Michael, you got anything else before we kind of wrap up for today?
No, I think it's just, you find stuff that works for you, right? Everybody's a little bit different. Everybody has different ways of getting things done. And so find a system, and if you have to bastardize it, make it fit your needs, and then use it. So find out what works.
I love it. Okay. Well, that was it for today's conversation on busy is not productive. Again, if you are finding these to be beneficial, please share them with another entrepreneur. We love to, build an audience of people who want to be more and more productive, and we're here to help you every step of the way. Next week, we're going to do that perfection is not progress. So the idea that you have to be perfect to progress, we're going to tackle that concept and we will be live on Zoom, live right here on this YouTube channel. Again, next Friday at 1 o'clock Eastern. And if you miss it, we'll release it as a podcast episode. It'll be available no later than Monday. That's my goal, is to make sure they're out there by Monday. It takes a little bit of editing, and it takes Michael Winnington a long time to edit those things.
Yeah.
So no one's buying that. No one's buying the Michael Winnington's editing anything. So all right, guys, thank you very much, and I'll look forward to talking to you next week.